Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much that you joined us today in the morning for the upcoming discussion here at this minimum waste space. I think it's the best space we can have a discussion like this about circular economy in Prague. So I would like to thank the organizers, the company MIWA or Minimum Waste, and also to the City Council of Prague, who supports this event space as well. Let me shortly introduce myself. My name is Zuzana Liscová. I work as a journalist, and I've been dealing with the topic of circular economy for several years now, so it's also something which personally interests me and I have a passion for. And I came across the term of circular economy a few years back in Berlin, sitting on an upcycled bench. And you will have much better opportunity to learn more about it from our distinguished panelists for today. And I would like to introduce to you, first of all, the lady, of course, Annette Lendal. She is from the MacArthur Foundation, and she will tell you more about the term of circular economy. She will make you familiar with the concept and tell us some very nice stories about the best practice examples. Okay. The next person who will be speaking is Marek Havrda. Marek Havrda is a sociologist, and he is a member of the advisory board for MIWA. And he will tell you more about the European legislation about circular economy, and he will also tell you how this legislation is being implemented in the member states. Then we will have Vojtěch Vosecký. Vojtěch Vosecký is a chief business officer from the Institut of Circular Economy, and he will tell us more about the recycling of plastic bottles and bags in the Czech Republic and how the general public deals with the trouble of waste. And last but not least, Jan Al-Amel. He is a marketing researcher from the company Simplify, and he will introduce to us a survey which was made in the Czech and Slovak Republic. And they ask in the survey about the behavior of consumers. And we will see the difference between the two countries. And we will also learn more about maybe also business opportunities in this field from him. And then after we hear the introductory speeches, I will open the discussion to you so that you can ask your questions and learn more about the things you are interested in. So, thank you very much for your attention. I wish all of us a nice and interesting discussion, and I would kindly ask Annette to begin.
Thank you so much. Can I use this one? Okay, so I work for the MacArthur Foundation. Does anyone know about the MacArthur Foundation? Yes. All right, that's good. So we are quite a small foundation actually, or we're growing. It's founded in 2010 and focused on the circular economy. And El MacArthur, who founded this, was my big idol when I was a kid actually. I'm a sailor, I come from Denmark. And when I was 13, she took the world record in circumventing the world, the fastest ever, alone. I was like, that cannot be true. So I had a poster of her in my room, and I was like, one day I want to do that. That clearly didn't happen, but now I work for her, so it's almost the same. And I feel very privileged to be part of this foundation, because we're really ambitious when it comes to the vision for our global economy. And one of the things we work with is plastic packaging. And we said that my team and the way we work with the new plastics economy is really within this vision of creating an economy where plastic never becomes waste. And you know, that's quite ambitious if you look at what the status currently is. 95% of plastic becomes waste, right? So that's our vision, and the way we do that is working with a lot of big corporates, also startups like miwa, but really trying to build that ecosystem of businesses and policy level interests that will take us there. We're trying to move away from a linear economy. So a linear economy is the way we currently live, where we take resources out of the ground, we make products, and we throw them away. That's the linear economy. That's a linear economy where our cars, for example, are only used 5% of the time, or where office buildings are empty, even during the working hours. You know? That's the economy where we use 3 out of 10 items in our closet, and where at least a third of all plastic packaging leaks into the environment. And that's what we want to move away from. So we want to move into an economy that we call it restorative and regenerative by design. We have 3 principles for that. So we want to make sure that we eliminate all the unnecessary plastic packaging, first of all. We want to make sure that we innovate new business models, new materials. And then, of course, whatever is left in this plastic packaging economy, we need to circulate. So we keep products and materials in use for as long as possible. And the way we do that in MacArthur within this new plastics economy team is by working with businesses in the global commitment. We launched this initiative last year. It's a major effort to try to get all the big businesses in the world behind the same vision. So now we actually have more than 400 signatories. They represent 20% of the industry. So it's not just like small scale. This is really big. It's Pepsi, it's Coke, it's Nestle, it's Unilever. And they're all signed up to meet targets for 2025, including having 100% of all plastic packaging being recyclable, reusable, or compostable. They have to set a target for recycled content of the packaging. And they have signed up to move from single-use to reuse models wherever relevant. And you might say, okay, that's great, but that's just not really quantitative. That's like, how do you judge that? And I think if you said that, that was a great point, because we think the same. And that's why they also signed up to us raising the bar each year. So not only do we now have them around the same table sign up to this, they also signed up to being transparent about their current use of plastic, how they're meeting these targets, and reporting on a yearly basis on the development. So it's really a major win for the industry that we now have this transparency for the world's biggest companies about what they use and how they use it and how they progress. Using the same definitions, which is really key here, because recyclable in theory is very different from recyclability in practice, for example. So that's one of the things we do. And then we also have plastic pacts. So I have colleagues that work with nations and businesses on a more like national scale level, where you sit around the table and then you decide in the UK, or if it was in Czech Republic, how could we set up a national action plan to create a circular economy for plastic packaging. That's really also a key driver for this. And then lastly, we have our innovation team. And that's where I'm privileged enough to work. So this is really where we try to say, what will 2025 look like? And hopefully give some answers to that before we're there, so we can guide innovators, but also businesses, in the direction we want to see the world going. So that's a bit about what I would like to talk about with you. It's really the innovation, what's going on, what's trending, what are the new big things that we should look at if we want to create a circular economy for plastic packaging. And there are a few examples, starting to eliminating plastic packaging by laser printing fruits and vegetables. Or designing out the wrappers, like why would you both have a container for the ice cream and the wrapper around it when you can just design the packaging differently so you don't need it? Or just eating your packaging in the applications where it makes sense. Tomorrow I'm doing a presentation in Sicily for the European ice cream industry. And I was thinking, like, why is it, these small plastic ice cream spoons? I used to work in an NGO in Denmark, and we did a lot of sailing around the world and cleanups. And on every single beach I was at, you would find these small, stupid ice cream spoons. It's just like a small application where we created a need for packaging that's completely unnecessary. Right? So that might be an idea for creating an eatable spoon. But of course, eatable packaging is not the solution for all applications, but it might be for some. And there are some really exciting developments within this space as well. But the most exciting space, without doubt, right now, and I'm not only saying that because I'm a total nerd, but really looking around, and my job is to travel around the world and talk to the businesses and do workshops with them in terms of how do we do this differently. And what everyone is talking about right now is reuse. Reusable packaging, so really rethinking completely the idea of having a container that's used once and then disposed, to creating a packaging that you want to reuse, either as a business or as a user. And using that packaging as an asset for the business to create that relationship with the user. It's really a new way of thinking about packaging. So that's what I think we should talk a bit more about. And I'm happy to have the discussion about that after. But just to be clear about reuse and the difference from recycling and why it's so exciting. So, you have the value chain of plastic packaging. Now, I didn't write it, maybe I should, but there comes oil into the system, often, like virgin oil taken out of the ground. It goes to plastic packaging producer, produce pellets, then it goes to a packaging producer, then it might go to a brand, then it might go to a retailer, and then it goes to a user. And we're talking about recycling. That end product of waste will then have to go all the way back up to the packaging producer, where it's shredded and cleaned and then remanufactured into new packaging. And that's great, right? We want products to be recycled. But that process takes a lot of energy and a lot of resources. And each time the packaging needs to travel between these different chains in the value chain, it takes energy. And that's why we're saying, if you could create those inner loops where the packaging doesn't need to be recycled, but reused, so it travels directly back to the user after it's finished or being used, or back to the service provider, or back to the retailer, you're saving a lot of resources. We call it the inner loop of the circular economy. So the time for reuse is really right now. Because we have that global alignment behind the vision of a circular economy, that's the global commitment that I talked about before. We have this inner loop argument, there's really clear environmental and climate benefits of reuse. But then we also see, and I think that's really important, that reuse taps into these new needs of consumers. They want customized products, they want a superior experience. And that whole idea of creating quality products is just so much more trendy than creating disposable packaging that just needs to be as cheap and light as possible. And then finally, this is an area of business opportunities, and I think that's really the key in terms of why it's so exciting and why it's so much on the lips of everyone working within this field. Because this is about business. How much more time do we have, Susanna?
Feel free to tell us more.
All right. It's just good to know, because the next part I can do in like 1 minute or 20 or 2 hours. But let's do like 5 minutes,
Okay.
10 minutes.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we wanted to understand this reuse space. So we set out to figure out what's going on around the world. And we mapped more than 100 initiatives and talked to 50 experts. This was my job the past 6 months, really trying to get an idea of what is reuse and how can we make a language to understand it. Because I don't know what you think about when I say reuse, because most people think about that, right? A reusable water bottle that you carry around in your bag and then you reuse it. And that's, of course, part of it. But reuse is so much more. And from our review of what's going on, we have mapped these solutions from across sectors, so ranging from personal care to home care, grocery shopping, cup solutions, takeaway, ready meals, transport packaging, this is not just a small niche, this is really something that's coming up across the board of different sectors. And just to give you an idea about some of the examples, you know, reuse for glass bottles was the norm for Coca-Cola since always. And then suddenly in the 1990s, when I was born, 1991, I think even when I was born, they introduced the lightweight single-use PET bottle. And then the rest is history, right? Because most of us probably don't even remember anymore that once back in time it was the norm to have these refillable glass bottles that you would return to Coca-Cola factory and they would be cleaned and refilled. But now in Brazil they're actually going back in time, but just doing it a bit smarter. So they're taking the refillable idea of glass, but you all know that glass is pretty heavy and that has other consequences if you want to transport it. So they're now doing refillables in plastic bottles, which is great in itself, but what is even greater, and I love these examples because they standardize the design. So you can see now all the different sub-brands of Coke are going into the same bottle. And that makes their operations so much more smooth. Because now this paper label will fall off in the washing process when it's returned, and they can fill in any kind of beverage into it. So they can really optimize operations. That's one benefit. But the other benefit of this is that they have increased the customer loyalty significantly by introducing this deposit and reward scheme. So in a country that's not used to deposit return schemes like we do have in Scandinavia, where I'm from, they have just embraced this. They have an 83% higher customer frequency. Users who buy this bottle, where you get a discount whenever you return it, you get a discount on the subsequent buy. So it's really efficient in terms of building that customer loyalty. A completely different example, just to give you an idea of the scope of what these reuse solutions can do, is El Guamo from Chile, a startup who has created a dispensing system on wheels. So now you can, with your mobile phone, order this tricycle to arrive in front of your door. It will come, it's solar powered, and you can go out and refill detergent in the quantities you like, so it's customized. And you'll get a 30 to 40% discount compared to retail prices because you sell it in reusable packaging that the customer keeps and owns and use it as a wallet. So in fact, this packaging has an RFID chip inside it that will connect with the system, so no money is involved here. And for Unilever, who is the sponsor of this in Chile, imagine the data insights they get about what users buy, when they buy it, how much they want. And you can even think about taking that further and creating customized options for which fragrance do they want, like we're seeing within beverages. So that new way of getting insights about users is super valuable to businesses. And of course, from the user point of view, you get a much better experience, right? Because you can get that personalized product and a personalized experience. And just the last example is Loop, and have you heard about that? I think it's been really a lot in the news, yeah. And I think it's great because it shows us this new idea of designing quality packaging. So they've created an online shopping platform for high quality packaging, but for everyday products. So Nestle and Coke and Pepsi's products are now redesigned into these luxurious reusable containers. So you get your ice cream delivered in a steel box that will keep the ice cream frozen for several hours outside the freezer, which is great from a user point of view, right? And then when you're finished with it, you just deliver it in that tote bag. So when you get your next delivery, they will pick up the empties, wash them, refill them. So a completely new way of selling products and better designed packaging that's washed and reused, in this case by the businesses and not the user. And now I don't think we have time to go through all these, but I can just in headlines say that we have identified 6 drivers of reuse and 6 trends within reuse. One thing is compacting the product to cut costs, like going from liquid to solids, for everything from toothpaste to beverages to cleaning products. 90% of cleaning products is water, right? That's crazy that we transport all that water back and forward when nearly everyone has water in their homes, so they can blend their products at home. That's one trend, and then reuse the container or the spray bottle. We talked about customization, adapting to individual needs. Shared design, so that was the Coca-Cola case, or the miwa case, where you think about standardizing the design across a product range to really being able to optimize the operations. That's key here, and I think that's going to be a key driver for reuse. Getting companies on board on that idea of not compromising on the packaging, because I really see it as an asset actually, but compromising on the specific looks of the packaging potentially, and then having other ways of differentiating in terms of the experience, for example, or the product itself. Deposit and reward, building that brand loyalty by giving the user an incentive to come back and make a new purchase is also a driver here. Superior design to improve the user experience. And then finally building these smart systems, like taking use of all the new technology improvements that we're seeing within this IoT space and using that to get insights about the user. These are the 6 drivers of reuse, as I see it. That's it from my side. I just want to finish by giving you the cue to the book, if you're interested. You can scan it, and then you will get the book. Yeah. So happy to get your feedback on it.
Thank you very much, Annette, for this moment. I'm particularly excited that we don't have to go so far for the best practice examples, because we have one of those here, actually.
Yes, and they are, of course, in the book as well.
So we have the smart shelves and the dispensers from Minimum Waste here around the corner. So then you can try with your own hands how it really works and how it can improve also your consumer experience and save waste at the same time. And since we are having a breakfast here, please feel free to have some more coffee from Mama Coffee over there, or have something to eat, because we have very decent vegan catering from catering. So please enjoy. It has been donated for this very occasion. So thank you very much, Annette, for this moment. And now I'm really curious. You were talking about the examples of the big companies who want to go for that, who want to reduce waste. Is the European Union prepared to go that far? And what are the legislation projects right now we can talk about? Please, Marek Havrda, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It's really difficult to come after such a good speaker. And it's even more difficult to come and talk about legislation. And it's even more difficult to talk about the European legislation. So I would like to show you what's going on recently at the level of the European Union and what the member states might do in terms of improving their environment in their countries to actually implement what we call the waste hierarchy and what we call the circular economy. But before I start, I have to make 3 disclaimers. One is I am actually still employee of the European Commission. Second is I'm a member of the Impact Assessment Board of the Czech Republic. And the third is I'm a member of the advisory board of miwa. So you can see my 3 biases going, kind of supporting in the commission I was actually working on sustainable consumption and production in my past life. So I'm just talking at my very, very personal capacity here this morning, so please take it into account. I'm not representing any of the bodies I'm either member or I've been member of in my previous appointments. Okay, so let's start. As you probably all know, there is something which is called the circular economy package. There's been a number of European directives adopted in the middle of 2018. And the member states are requested to take them into account and transpose them into their own legislation by basically mid-2020. What the whole package is about, it's about really like enabling and supporting the switch towards what Annette was talking about, towards circular economy. What is really important, and I want to talk about one particular directive, and it's a directive on waste and waste packaging. and I would like to concentrate on reuse, because I think we're in the place which is great to talk about reuse. So finally, this directive, this package is actually really putting in practice what has been there for ages in the European legislation and in many member states, which is called the waste hierarchy. Basically, you need to start with prevention, and then going through reuse, and then going just to recycle. And the very, very last point is to dump it somewhere at the end. And so, of course, you might want to use it for energy somewhere in between the process. Okay. What is really important to mention is that we are looking into the environmental impact, and it's not the simple way there's no simple way how to account for environmental impact. We hear a lot about the climate change, so there's one of the proxies, the greenhouse gases, especially the CO2. But as well, there are many other environmental impacts you basically need to consider and take into account. And this is why there is this mentioning about the whole life cycle, and I will get back to it, I think, in my last slide. Can we move the slides, or they move forward? Okay. Okay, so the directive 852 of last year is basically talking about the member states have to take measures, implement measures to move towards more reuse. So basically this is the exact wording from the directive. And there are main 4 ways how they should do it. Deposit return schemes, targets, be it quantitative or qualitative, economic incentives, and finally, setting up kind of like a minimum threshold of packaging which is reusable to be introduced every year on the market. And there are solutions. I talked about the global solutions. I'm privileged enough actually to know a number of them because I was involved in the accelerator of the MacArthur Foundation about 2 years ago. But they're here in the Czech Republic. There are new ways how to do things. There is the movement even here in the country, and Vojtěch will talk, I'm sure, about the other. So miwa is here, Otočka Limek is here in a number of cafes, and Repete Box again is like a reusable packaging when you send something through the e-commerce. So there are a number of ways how you could actually implement it. And the legislation could really push this much faster. So the markets would actually take on the innovation much faster than they would take in the situation as the business as usual. So let's look at some of these just very briefly in a small detail. So deposit return schemes. Slovakia has just been introducing deposit return schemes on the PET bottles recently. We're not even thinking about it really. I mean, there's study and INSEAD being trying to push the idea, but at the level of legislation, we're really not having a serious discussion.
And basically, the opposite of legislation.
That's what I want to say. And basically, we don't have a serious discussion about any of these in this country, unfortunately, so far. And I hope it will change when the legislative package, which is to adopt this directive, will come to the parliament. So for the deposit return schemes, they need to be simple and open, so they would be easy for the consumers to actually adopt, and of course for the businesses. That's one clear prerequisite. The second one is to put the deposit, the monetary deposit at the right level. So it would be enough for as a motivation for the consumers to use it. And as well, there would be no kind of a gaming. If it's too high, then there might be different gaming, like transporting and importing packages from somewhere else, etc., etc. What is important in my view is we should not be looking just at the bottles and maybe some other items, but we might want to be looking into these new types of packaging, as for example, Algramo is using and miwa will be using for the kind of like a closing the loop to the consumer. So looking into the different standards which could be developed by the business, etc., etc. Targets. The legislation does not set targets for the reuse. It sets targets for recycling, and the targets and the reuse can account to the targets to a certain extent for to the recycling, which there is put in the legislation. Targets are really important. There's been going on discussion how you could actually develop the targets, and they're clearly based. The complexity is there, but it's not that high that it would not be possible to develop targets, either at the level of the product groups or either at the level of the packaging per capita used in the country. So how much packaging each of us is actually using, so which portion of it actually should be reusable packaging. So you could develop these types of targets. At the level of retail, setting up the total target for next. Normally the targets are for some kind of like a period which is like 2024, 2025. But we could have like much firmer targets and much more exact targets for like next year, the year after, and the year after. And you could be developing kind of like a dynamic legislation where you would create the certainty for the businesses because you say what the targets are for the next periods. But at the same time, you're pushing them very hardly, like to move gradually to higher level of reusable packaging. The third is extended retailer responsibility. It's kind of just an idea. There is an extended producer responsibility where all the producers have to contribute to getting rid of the waste in a simplified way. We could much more be looking into what the retailers can do and how to actually extend their responsibility. It takes me to my, hopefully, final slide, which is empowering consumers. And I'm sure Jan will talk about the surveys. The consumers are basically ready to move. We have lots of signals for a number of surveys, including this country. There have been at least two important surveys, one by the Masaryk University and one by Simplify, showing clearly there is a huge business potential into moving to more sustainable solutions when it comes to packaging and when it comes to consumption in general. So consumers are ready to move. The problem is, I was a lot working in my past life in the Commission on labeling. So how you actually inform the consumers what is more environmentally friendly. And the problem there is, it's not really simple. The complexity is so high, to communicate the information is super difficult. So what we need to have many more studies, which we call the LCA, which is the Life Cycle Assessment Study. And MIWA has conducted one, and clearly showing MIWA is superior to the conventional packaging for the product groups which are able to be delivered by MIWA. But you would need to do this for many other options basically you have, and then to communicate basically, kind of like a much bigger picture than kind of like a one label which doesn't say much. And there have been proliferation of labels which actually might mislead the consumer instead of helping them to guide them to a more sustainable way of consumption. The last point I would like to make is a connection to health. Now, when I was in the Commission, the directorate there was a joint directorate for consumers and health. It has changed since. And I think it was good that it was connected at one point of time, because 90% of our health actually depends on our lifestyle. So connecting it to our lifestyle in terms of consumption is really important. And there are different examples where you could really nicely connect. I just picked up one from Catalonia. World Health Organization is advocating for a tax on high content sugar drinks. This tax should be significant actually in order to change the consumption. So about 20% is as a minimum. When this was introduced in Catalonia, the consumption of these drinks went down about 1/4. What happens is obviously the use of packaging goes 1/4 down. So the use of packaging, the PET and the cans goes down. So we could be thinking into how we could build these synergies, connecting health and the impact on the environment. And I would like to finish here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marek. I think your task was indeed very difficult to talk for such a small amount of time about such a complex topic. So thank you very much for your insights. And I would kindly ask Vojtěch to talk about the situation in our country a little bit more, and to tell you more about how we deal with waste and if we are prepared for change.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me here for the introduction. And it's a great pleasure being here and seeing this place. You know, we are at the heart of like a reuse transformation that's possibly taking place in the Czech Republic right now as we speak. But I'll get to that a bit later. So my name is Vojtěch Vosecký. I work in Institut of Circular Economy. To put it simply, and I will talk a little bit more about our work later, and a bit boldly as well, what the MacArthur Foundation is doing on an international level, on a global scale, we narrow it down to the national level and the national scale. So our vision is Circular Czech and Slovakia, where we also have our daughter organization. And we help companies, government, regions, municipalities, but also our general society sort of understand the need for the circular economy, find ways to move there, to apply these principles in daily lives or practices or businesses, and implement some of these solutions. Today, it's about reuse. I think it's a really interesting topic, but I won't have it easy either, gotta say, because it's sort of a merge of MacArthur Foundation was speaking about, or Marek from miwa and other functions I've been speaking about. So I hope I won't be repetitive. I will try to add a little bit of a new taste to my message for you today. And I would like to start with asking you a question. And I encourage my colleagues from INSEAD not to indulge. But so what do you, okay, let's have a look at the current state today, at our, I call it this single-use consumeristic lifestyle society that we are in today, this linear economy. Do you know how many plastic bottles are sold in Czech every year? Take a wild guess. Or a good guess.
It's not packaging.
Anyone? How many plastic bottles are sold annually in Czech?
500 million.
500 million? It's more. But you're in the right amount of zeros.
700.
Oh, well, actually, there's one more zero to it as well. It's hard to estimate. We tried to have a look at it. They don't want to really share the data. But our estimate is 2 billion plastic bottles every year. In Slovakia, it's 1.2. It's a country half the size of Czech. What about plastic bags? Any guess, again, about a scale of like this single-use items that we surround ourselves with?
One more zero.
One less zero, actually.
One less.
Depends on what plastic bags are we talking about. I'm talking about the ones that you have to buy, that you have to pay for. Not the small micro tin, that's billions.
Yeah. Okay.
But the ones that you have to pay for. We have to move on, so take a shot.
100 million.
It's about 350 million every year. But the good news is that this is gonna cut down significantly, because a lot of the Czech retail or international retailers in Czech, like Tesco, Lidl, Penny, also based on LCA studies, are cutting down this and switching to paper, single-use bags, which I'm not sure really if that's a good idea or not, but okay, let's leave it for later. And then the last question, what's the best plastic for recycling? And I just also wanted to have a disclaimer. I don't think recycling is the solution. We're not going to recycle our way out of this, but it is something that's important sort of to change already from the current scheme that we are at. So would you guess what is the best sort of consumer plastic we surround ourselves with? PET. PET. And it's based on a market price. It sells good on the market. But anyway, tak můžeš to, prosím tě. Maybe I turned it off. Okay, so zooming out and looking at what's happening, so we see what's happening here. We are really using a lot of things. We're producing a lot of waste, unnecessary waste, But if we zoom out and we look at what's happened in the world in the last 250 years, we're seeing a tremendous growth in GDP, population, the amount of resources we're using, which has a direct or indirect impact on the sort of Earth system trends in terms of carbon emissions, methane emissions, acidification of our oceans, deforestation. And when we ask, like, how did we get here? I think I'm a strong believer that's because that we live in a linear economy. As it has been already introduced, it's a system where we take, make, and we dispose. With a plastic bottle, when you're done, you throw it away and it ends up on a landfill or burned, worse in the environment. And that's how we're losing this oil that we're putting into it. And the solution is circular economy, which redefines the way we think of resources, closes the loop, and keeps the material in the loop, while using many of these different principles. And today, it's about reuse. And I'm proud to say that, and I think it's also thanks to work of MacArthur Foundation and European Commission, we have a lot of work with that topic today, because a lot of companies have been approaching us asking, okay, what can we do? And one of the projects that I'm happy to share with you, it's not a proper reuse, but in its mindset, it's about keeping the material in the loop for as long as possible. It's a topic of deposit on plastic bottles and cans, which has been resonating in the Czech society for a year and a half. We teamed up with the biggest plastic bottled water producing company in Czech. They own Pepsi as well, they're called Matony. And we helped them to assess and design a system where it would not only be about a deposit and sort of making sure that close to 100% of the plastic bottles get back to the retail, back to the producer, but it's also about putting this material back into designing of new bottles. So Matony got really inspired, and their plan is to use all this plastic into new design of new plastic bottles. So they would love to use up to 90% of that plastic to design new bottles. And when we did LCA with Mr. Kochi, we found out that it really has positive impacts on the environment. About 28% reduction on total negative environmental effects if we compare the current system with the deposit system on plastic bottles and cans. We also work with L'Oreal, with Coke, with Tetra Pak on sort of trying to assess the status quo and try to change it. But I'm not going to talk just about us. I wanted to share with you a few other examples of really inspiring Czech companies and startups. Miwa was mentioned. But this is Tierra Verde. Has anyone heard about Tierra Verde here? Yes. It's a Czech company that produces personal care products, drogistic products. And they started doing this. It's a refillable, rechargeable selling point where you can come with your reusable bottle and pump as much as you want. And it's been a great success, also economically, because this is, and I borrowed these slides from our partners, designers that are helping actually to design these packaging and these systems and communicating from butterflies and hurricanes. And then economically, it's really interesting because what we're seeing since they started implementing this reuse, their revenues, especially on this reuse part of business, grow by 300% every year. So it's a good business, and it's starting to be, and it's a proof that customers are really interested in solutions like these. As it has been mentioned, another great example, Otočka Switcher Cup. It's new, but right now they have about 150 places where you can do this, also connected with a deposit. Great tool to sort of encourage reuse, customers bringing back their reusable products, and whoever is in charge of it to making sure it gets back to the system. Repetebox, I see members of Repetebox back there. So another great example of combining e-commerce with reusable packaging. They managed to team up with the biggest online shop, Alza, and they started doing this Alza Express reusable packaging service, which I'm personally really excited about, and congrats for ensuring such a huge client though. And I mean, there are more examples, many more, and I'm sorry I can't share more inspiring cases like that, but I wanted to share with you this because it all sounds great, right? There's so many examples, it's good business, but what's happening here, this is a chart of the total separation, not recycling, separation of packaging in Czech Republic, post-consumer packaging especially. And we're seeing that in 2017, we separated 69% of plastic packaging. But in 2018, it was 2% lower. Anyone has an opinion why is this happening? What's behind it? With such a huge media massage, right, about like that we need to do something with these new business models, with retailers, new claims. Still, we're separating less plastic packaging, thus recycling. Anyone has a guess why?
Price is too low.
There's more packaging, and the infrastructure doesn't keep up. So it's just more stuff that we're putting, and we don't have enough. Containers to put it. And of course, there are negative impacts, really negative impacts with these single-use post-consumer packaging. We're seeing this is a study that Ministry of Environment did. They looked at what's the issue with littering. It's from 2007, but I think it can still apply to today. And we're seeing that by volume, by far the worst example of littering in the Czech Republic are PET, single-use plastic bottles, or other plastics, and also paper. And just to top it up with another bit of a sad message, since China closed its doors to low-quality separated plastic, what happened in Europe and in Czech is that suddenly these recycling rates of what gets separated dropped significantly. So actually, half of that amount that we separate, we put in these yellow bins, ends up still on landfills or incinerated, which is really a huge loss, and it's costing a lot of money actually to separate and recycle a lot of plastic packaging. It's more expensive than if you threw it in this black bin and send it to incinerator already, because it ends up there anyway, but it takes more turns and it has to enter the plastic separation infrastructure.
Sorry, is there a way to differentiate between the packaging that is like a simple way, like this is the black box, this is the yellow box?
It's the problem. That's the problem, because most of this separation is low tech. It's people like this that are standing on these lines, and they have to use their eyes, and it's moving really quickly. So that's why plastic bottles are good, because everyone knows it's from PET, so you throw it there. But if you see a box on tomatoes, it could be PET, PE,
you can tell really, like at the first time.
No, there's no time, so a lot of it just goes down to the black hole. But the automation, AI, digitalization, it can really help. But to conclude with some positive message and to build on what Marek has been saying, there are solutions. I think the quick wins are several-fold. It's environmental taxes like they do in Norway. Like you can't just design a plastic bottle while putting some other composites in it. It has to be all from one material or maximum two, otherwise you pay more, or you are not even allowed to put that packaging on a market. They also have a chart, if you ensure as a producer of packaging that 90% of it gets back and recycled, you don't pay any tax to the EPR schemes for introducing new packaging on a market. So it encourages producers to redesign their ways, how they think of packaging, and enter into deposit schemes. And what's coming into Czech, it's this eco-modulation. I'm curious about how the Czech government's gonna make that transposition. But this is a great way to sort of redefine the way we think of packaging in Czech to encourage reuse, recyclability, and more recycling. So, yeah, that's for me. Thanks. Looking forward to a discussion later on.
Vojta, thank you very much for this again very inspiring input. Talking about taxes and other measures like this, I'm very curious what Jan will tell us, because those measures are always very controversial. And I'm really curious if the Czech society or the Slovak society are prepared for changes like this.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. My name is Jan Al-Amel. I'll be talking about a study which we did a year ago from now, which was basically looking at where people are mentally regarding the whole kind of set of thoughts about helping the environment and behaving a little bit more responsibly, and where they are in terms of, let's say, their actual actions. It was a study conducted in Czech Republic and Slovakia, and I have 5 to 10 minutes It's 2 countries, so I will try to focus on one, on Czech Republic, and if there's time, I'll pick only a few bits for comparison. Representative study was looking at the situation among people 16 to 60, so let's say economically active population. We can look at it very positively. People want to do good, right? So 4 of 5 say they believe and trust that their individual behavior can have a positive impact. People are not cynical. People believe that actually if there is a convenience related or practicality or empowering related incentive, something more sustainable is worth doing. And about every second claims they will pay more. So it's very good. It's distributed a little bit irregularly though. You can find a pretty simple logic of segmenting people nationwide into 4 groups. Based on how much they believe kind of sustainability and eco-friendly or ecological topics are important and threatening them, and how much they actually do anything. So vertical is how much I'm concerned, and horizontally is how much I do. The green segment, about 1/3 of the population, it's mainly women, and it's more often people who actually see their trash every day. So people who live in family houses, so to say. People who are immediately responsible for their trash, so they're also concerned how this actually ends up. These people are actually much more likely to respond to anything with eco claim, because it is a consumption proposition for them. It is a benefit. They consider this to be really a something that they desire, because they understand consequences and consider it being their cause. The yellow segment is, let's say, technical by orientation by certain demographic. This would be men around 40 most often, technical oriented people, and they would go anything sustainable or ecological only if it has, I would say, smart labels. Yeah? They want to be empowered to do more, and ecology or sustainability can be part of it. Those who are on the top are basically people of my generation, I would say, empty nesters 50 to 60, who actually believe they do a little because they already shrink the consumption. So they actually produce a lot of negative consequences, and they think it is all the system's duty to do the change for better. So it's producers, it's primary and secondary sector to do the change. And here is just young boys and girls who still don't have their own households, so to say. So ecology, being kind of linked to eco as a household originally, actually really relates to the fact whether you are responsible for your immediate environment. These guys basically have other challenges, like how to establish their own life, etc. And on large scale are actually those who actually feel the least engaged. Of course, you have also the most, I would say, engaged subgroup in this lifestyle or life stage segment. But generally, there is the least tendency to do at large. On the example of how much people consider, for example, global warming as something they can actually help to, and who should drive the change, you can actually see that about 60% of people believe that it is a real problem, but me as a person, I'm the one who can change it only for about 1/4. More people believe it is really the producers, manufacturing companies, and technology companies. There seems to be huge trust and belief that technology can bring positive change, according to people. And I'm sorry you don't see all the labels, but if you look at the top quadrant here, these are the top left quadrant. These are the sectors which are believed to bring the most positive impact food producers, retail companies, and I would say service companies. So those who are not associated with littering and with pollution. On the other hand, those who are dirty will remain dirty. Yeah? So primary sector, energetic companies, logistics, their people believe it will be only reducing the negative imprint, but not the change. And the scientific institutes, companies and research, I'm happy to say they already believe they do a lot. Yeah? Okay. Why I'm saying it? I'm saying it also because if you look at where the technology should leverage more sustainable behavior, people believe packaging innovations and packaging solutions are actually right after the limitation of production process negative impacts. Yeah? So this is the second most, I would say, promising area where people expect the change to be due to technology bigger, and it's about 60% of the population, so quite large. Importantly, if you ask people kind of dichotomic options, a lot believe recycling is not kind of all saving way forward. Although it is something that almost everyone does, it is not, I think, something that they believe is the right way or the only thing to focus on. 70% of people believe recycling is not an ideal solution, and only 30% think we should focus on recycling, and because it can help us to basically produce new stuff from recycled. About the same portion of people believe it's better to fix things rather than to buy new stuff, which is produced based on more advanced, more eco-friendly standards. Again, more or less the same portion believes less packaging to reduce waste is better way than basically investing more and more into, let's say, more advanced ways to dispose stuff better. And this also corresponds with the fact that people basically tend to orient towards, let's say, fresher, immediately consumable products. And therefore they are somehow able to make concession from having everything packaged. But these all are basically, I would say, their wishes. If you look at how many people actually do choices which are sustainable every day, it is only about 30% who shop and consume sustainable always. Yeah, half of the more responsible, that means shopping and consuming sustainably every day, sometimes, or at least in about half of the cases, have started only 5 years ago or even more recently. That means the whole trend is still kind of taking momentum. People are maybe right now starting to turn their positive attitudes and motivations into behavior, and here actually comes the important thing. We need to give them stimuli. What I want to show is this. The darker bars are I always or often do certain, let's say, sustainability friendly or eco-friendly activity in my daily routines. The brighter bars are where I do it, like, at least from time to time. The important things is sorting waste, not wasting, not buying too much, and carrying my bag to purchase my own bag are actually where people do very often. These activities are done very often. The less is people do it from time to time, but there is a gap in consistency, and this gap in consistency is because these are the areas where we actually need to give them appealing choices. Sorting waste, bringing my bag to the store, or not spending too much. This is not actually an alternative. It is just making my routine a little bit more good, a little bit more organized, a little bit more positive. Whereas in all the other areas, I'm actually competing with there is a competition between something good and sustainable and something maybe more desirable, maybe more premium, maybe more advanced in technology and whatsoever. And we need to find ways to piggyback on these benefits to make people actually compare their wish with their behavior. About zero packaging shopping options, there seems to be really still limited awareness. So this is a huge opportunity, and the opportunity can be considered even bigger, because if you look at what people currently do, even though they don't know about the zero packaging options, there's a lot of traditional things on which we can piggyback again. People always used to bring certain like own bags. People always used to do little things to economize or to, let's say, personalize their routines. So on shopping bags, snack box, reusable beer bottles, reusable water bottles, all these things, people are actually from time to time doing it, and we are not introducing anything fairly new. We just perhaps also have to communicate to them in a way that this is just more advanced way of doing something they already do. And if you look at drivers for reusable packaging solutions in retail, long-term usage of this, so it is not one-off, economical aspect, possibility to adjust the right quantities just for me, more ecological character and convenience seem to be the key drivers. However, if you look at what's more appealing to women, this is all about, let's say, long-term good value, and actually the ecological aspect. Males, the violet highlighted items, much more focused on really what is more smart, more technologically advanced, what is more empowering. Yeah. Barriers, price, of course. I wouldn't do it if it's more expensive, at least in half of the cases. Hygiene, a lot of questions about it, and importantly, informative aspect of the packaging. Yeah. That would be it from my side. Concluding, as I promised, little comparison with Slovaks. Slovaks seem to be much more engaged in ecology, but mainly because a lot of people in Slovakia have kind of jumped on the way only recently. So you have much more activated consumers there with much more willingness and also with higher activity in certain eco-friendly things, but they are less consistent over the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jan. It was also a really interesting survey about the behavior of the consumers and about incentives for them and about ways how to improve the current situation. And it may be partly positive that the change is possible, so thank you for that. And now I would kindly ask all of our panelists if you can join us at the table, please. And now it's your turn. So you can ask your questions. Please tell us if you want to address your question to a concrete panelist or if you want to ask generally all of them and introduce yourself. So please, the floor is yours now.
Everyone, I'm Marek Havrda and I do innovation in the brewery. My question is regarding recycling. So I heard a bit, tone was like recycling is not a solution. But plastic is cheap, it's convenient for consumer, and it's good quality. So why? So if I am as a consumer, I have lots of things to do, and this is just a good solution. So why would recycling be not an option? And if you can also comment a bit on the situation in Germany, where I believe this is the recollection in place, whether this is a model to follow.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah. Ladies first.
Well, I think recycling is definitely part of the solution. So that's important to say, that it's not there. The main problem is that if we look around at what's going on around the world, almost all of the efforts right now are targeted at optimizing recycling. And I think you did a pretty good job of showing you showed the pictures, who was it, of the recycling facility. And just like that process of recycling is so complex, and you as a company, you can do, you have responsibility until you design the product, you make it technically recyclable, but then you release it into the market, and the rest of its life is not dependent on you, it's depending on so many other things working in that process. Everything from the white sorting from the user side, to the country or the facility where it ends up in the technology there, or the person, in this case in Czech Republic, physically sorting it right. So it's just to say that recycling is really complex to be successful. It's really expensive to be successful because we just don't have the infrastructure in place yet in most countries to make this work. And that's why we're saying, if we want to do something about plastic packaging waste now, money and efforts are so much better spent focused on that inner loop of reuse. And it can still be plastic, and that's why I made the case for reusable, refillable plastic bottles in Brazil, because plastic is a fantastic material. We want to keep this material in use for as long as possible, but using it once and counting on a recycling system to be in place for us to get the value out of it is just a bit risky.
So what's your view then on the fact that many players are trying to increase the recycled content in plastic bottles, and or switching to cans or glass, which also has a lot of negative.
I mean, you're spot on, and I think the challenge is right there, as you say so. I think recycled content, again, that's another way of trying to improve the footprint of that packaging. And of course, we should have as high as possible a recycled content in anything. Then we have some legislative barriers to using recycled content in food packaging. Not for PET, but for many other applications. And that's why, once again, it's tricky with recycling to make it really work at the same level as we could make reusable works. And I think that substitution to other materials, it's a critical challenge we have right now. That because plastic is being shamed, and many consumers think that plastic is the problem, and then if we just all use paper or bamboo or glass, we're safe. And that's really where we need science, and we need data, and we need that education, because it's not about the material, it's about the use. And I think that's really the key here, that no matter what material you use, single use will never, ever be a sustainable choice. So it's really about creating materials that last, and then the certain material choice will depend on the specific application and the system in place to handle those materials.
I would only coin what you were saying. I mean, it's you put it perfectly well. But just to give it my personal perspective, I think first of all, I also wouldn't shame plastics. I think it's a great material, but it allowed really the full embracement of this single-use throwaway culture, and it doesn't degrade in the nature, which is a big issue. So something needs to happen. But finding alternatives and replacements, now we're going to use paper or bioplastics or metal. I think we have to be really careful with that, and it could be dangerous or even counterproductive if we think of bioplastics or biodegradable, because we're seeing evidence shows that doesn't work. They don't biodegrade. And what are we telling to people? So now I have a biodegradable plastic cup, so am I helping the nature if I throw it away in the forest? That's not really, I think, good way. But we need to find alternatives, and recycled content, it's a great first thing that we can do, because it automatically enforces recycling, because it increases the demand for secondary raw materials that are hand sorted, for example. But it also, every LCA that you look at, it shows that it also decreases the CO2 impact of the packaging. So the more recycled content you use, the less raw materials you need to take from the ground. But to finish, I think recycling, we're not going to recycle our way out of it. It's always like a rabbit which is faster, and when you try to recycle, you will never catch it, because when with paper, with plastic, with glass, it's like you can't recycle indefinitely. You know, with paper you can only recycle 6 or 7 times, and then the cellulose fibers are lost, and then you have this egg packaging, which you shouldn't actually put in paper anymore. So from a long term, we're still not closing the loop and losing the value that we put into our materials that we surround ourselves with. So that's why it's really important to switch from the single use to reuse, repair, refurbish, and then follow the waste hierarchy, where the top thing is to prevent the things from even going waste. And the recycling is like a last resort, which is crucial, and we need to kickstart it and keep it up, but it will never really solve this crisis we're at, I think.
That was a short one.
Yes. Sorry.
I wanted to comment on this one. I think this is one of really important questions which is not discussed with sufficient evidence, both in terms of behavior and more importantly in technical terms. I would like to divide it into 2 areas. One is the material. For many materials, there is not good recycling available when it comes to plastics. There's a good recycling for PET, but the rest of the materials is much more complicated. There are new projects going on, and there's a big competition who will deliver good chemical recycling. There is already demonstration plans, but we're still not there. So we basically cannot take all the plastic and put it somewhere and have recycled plastic out of it. It's not possible. So we need to sort it more. PET is one base. This is why the deposit schemes on PET make sense, because you get out of the system the PET, and then you can recycle it, and there is money involved in it. Second is the design. For many materials, there are like multi-materials, the packaging. So it's not a single material, which makes it really complex. You have like different composite materials. You have not only like your plastic plus something. So this combination of different materials make it really super difficult to recycle. Third is on the vision. I'm working mostly with, apart from sustainability, I work with artificial intelligence company. And I see there already functional systems of kind of like automatic sorting of the whole household waste. So for the future, I would like to much more see, like, we're not forced to have like a separate collection. We have a single collection, and then just be separated in an industrial facility and kind of ensure like the things are separated as much as possible, and then they're divided. When it comes to so this is the future. In Finland, there is already a functioning facility, and in other countries as well. When it comes to the current situation, we're talking about reuse. Yes, reuse is a part of the solution, obviously. But always you have to really conduct the life cycle assessment, because if you want to do reuse, basically you need kind of like that this will be actually more durable than it will be for the single use. So you need to count how many actually cycles. It's really important. This kind of like a cycles the packaging can go through before it goes for recycling. And there are two points. So one is enhancing the number of cycles. The larger number of cycles, the better, clearly. And then there will be some break-even point when it's really superior to single use. Second is good design of the reusable packaging, and I think miwa is getting a great job on this, trying to do it in the single type of plastic. So then, and plus, if you in kind of like industrial setting, then recycling is much easier than it goes to the household. So if you manage it either kind of like a deposit return scheme or just kind of like B2B situation, there you're under kind of like a full control of the material. So then you can, if it's like single like material, then you can really take it in an industrial way and just transport it to the recycling facility. And then everything else is valid, like you need energy, but still it's better than actually using the virgin material.
Maybe a little comment just on that, not from the efficacy or let's say the results point of view, but let's say more inside view. With recycling mindset, you are still not responsible for your litter, so you are not participating. with the reuse mindset, you are actually increasing the sense of responsibility on both producer and consumer side, and hence you also kind of ideally lock people more in the change. So I think where you participate on, there you care more.
Yeah.
So yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Thank you. We had another question.
I just wanted to add a short comment, if I may, on this question. I think it's very important. I work for the City of Prague, and I often feel that the whole notion of recycling or recyclable is a bit misleading. It's misleading both consumers and businesses. And because the thing is, what we are used to as consumers and as businesses, when we see the recycling logo, the 3 arrows, when you buy a product or a packaging for a company, it doesn't matter, that shows you this logo, you feel like exonerated, you feel like you took the right path, right? Because you bought something recyclable. But the problem is, and I think the experts are partly to blame, is there's a huge difference between things that are theoretically recyclable, things that are in practice being recycled in a facility, and things that you buy that will be recycled where you throw them away. And the gap is huge. So for instance, the Czech public is used to separating waste. And we think of ourselves as being quite good at it. We separate plastics everywhere we go. The thing is, they're not being recycled, And part of the problem is, of course, there are facilities that could recycle this and that type of material, but they are far away, so basically the business doesn't do that. And I think we're finding ourselves in this kind of a loop where we think we buy something that is somehow, we read in the newspaper that in Finland they have this facility is actually able to recycle this or that material, and we somehow have this feeling that actually we're reading the news and we somehow feel from the experts that we are on the right track, and I think we aren't often. And I think this is partly for a task for the public administration and for the experts and for the businesses to understand that I think Vojtěch would agree that we're meeting companies like of the size of McDonald's who are able to go for it, and the CSR department puts loads of effort in
Straws.
And they just put this huge amount of effort into buying paper cups because somebody told them on the internet that they are either degradable or recyclable, which in theory they are, but in practice they just at best are being carried to markets and burned, and the other part of reality is just being thrown away and landfilled. And this is a task for all of us to be honest with each other and be honest with people out there who don't follow the news, who don't believe them. Just tell them that
Thank you very much for that comment. Obviously, we need a change of the whole mindset, which won't be easy, definitely. But let's keep that in mind. Do we have any other questions? Yes, please.
What about washing? Is it really a good solution? What about the use of water, which is an important resource, and the use of chemicals in the environment?
And you're spot on, and I think that's also the key when we look at these reuse systems, to really look at the full cycle. I think LCAs, it's been highlighted today as like the savior in terms of giving us the right answers. I think LCAs can be just as much a barrier as the solution within this field, because you can basically get an LCA to tell you whatever you want. But the point about
any numbers.
But the good thing about LCAs is that it forces us to think about all the different aspects of the production and consumption process that could affect its footprint. And that's what we're trying to tell the businesses, that when you start up with a reusable system, the LCA might not be positive from day one, or the consumption footprint might not be positive for day one, because as you say, you would need to have that reverse logistics where you have additional transport, you need a washing facility and a redistribution out to brand owners or production sites. And that requires some volume before it shows a benefit, environmental benefit. So it is tricky, but good thing is to be aware of it. And most of these solutions can be environmentally beneficial. I will even say they will be the most beneficial, but of course we need to design the systems right. And that's again back to the idea of sharing packaging. So the more standardized packaging is across different brands or within brands. So for example, I work with these large FMCGs where we say, okay, within Unilever, 27 sub-brands of shampoo. Could we think about having 1 or 2 shampoo bottles instead of having 27 different? That idea would indeed optimize washing, for example, so you could make it much more harmonized. And we're even looking into with some of these big brands like washing without water. And that's, again, an area of technology and innovation, right? But I think it's absolutely key to be aware of the chemicals, the water use, the electricity use, the mode of transport, for all of these reuse models to really be beneficial.
Can I just comment on it?
Or you go first? No, I go first with the short one. I will be a little bit disagreeing, so it's not like so like completely like one voice talking from this side of the room. I would be much nicer to the LCA. The point is, it's still the best what we have.
Yeah, that's
okay. So if you're honest with your LCA, of course you can fiddle the numbers as any other numbers. But if you're honest, then it helps you to actually understand all the processes which are involved. So for example, for miwa, like it would not be only washing, but it would be of course transport and reverse logistics of the capsules. So you take it into account because it's a part of your system. So and then it helps you to account for all the different environmental aspects. Water is in all the standard models is an important aspect you have to look into. So it doesn't take you into one path, be it CO2 or be it water or be it toxicity. It takes you to multiple considerations. So it has these two important, and the third is really it goes from the whole life cycle. So from the virgin material to the end of life of that packaging in this concrete example. So I think we don't have anything better. We have to use it, and it helps us to understand the water and any other kind of environmental impacts. When we did the LCA for miwa, you would think transport might be important. It's not. It turns out it's actually not. Like for the models, it might change because of the practice, because we had to model something on something which is non-existent, obviously. So you make a number of assumptions, but of course we try to make these assumptions as accurate as possible. And based on these assumptions, the transport would account for something like 10% of the overall impact. So it was not really important.
Can I just add to that? I'm somewhere in the middle. Like I think that it's true, and it's a big problem. Like a lot of the LCAs, and I think there's a scientific study on looking at a lot of LCAs. The results are fake sometimes, and it's really missing. But still, it's the best we have, and we need it because we're facing complex challenges and decisions that can impact the whole industry for the decades onwards, and we have to prevent something like the biofuels of the first generation, because that's a disaster, environmental disaster, and it's so hard to get back from it. And this is, I think, how careful we have to be when it comes to maybe packaging, but a lot of different areas. And with the reuse and the water, that's exactly what I had in mind. Like today, I hoped we were going to talk about it because I think it can be an issue, but the gut feeling, it's not enough. Then you need to have a look at it. I could talk from the experience with the plastic bottles. I'm not an advocate for them. I personally like to drink water from tap. So I'm going to be speaking just for the results that we found out. And when we also challenged our client, Maton, it's like, why don't you go reusable and deposit system? They said, you can't, so when the customer brings it back to the retail, you can't compact the plastics into nice cubes. You basically are transporting air, and then you have to wash it, bring it back, and then you can't do it for so many times, because that's why Coke stopped with this refillable deposit system in the 90s in Czech. I think a lot of you remember that, because the bottles after 3 uses, they were designed for many more uses, but after 3 uses, they had scratches, and their color from transparent changed to a little bit like grayish, and people didn't want to buy it anymore. So it's and when we looked at the LCA of the plastic bottles, we saw again transport is much more minor issue in compare with whether you recycle and then where you put it back. So the most CO2 savings when it comes to bottle singeing you can do on using plastic and oil in it that has been in the use before. So it's not so much about the water.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm very sorry to say that, but we are slightly running out of time. But I would suggest that we will have 5 more minutes, if you don't mind. And
even more if you want.
Or if you want to stay, just up to you. But I would maybe suggest that we will have the 2 last questions. Please keep them short. You had a question and then afterwards maybe we can close up the big round and you can ask also our panelists informally. I hope they will stay with us a bit longer. Yes, so please.
Analyst at Institut of Circular Economy. So actually, my question is about something I'll react that Coca-Cola introducing these refill plastic bottles in Brazil. I guess they're gonna face the same issue like in Czech Republic, like in 90s, that those plastic bottles will be scratched and like they all change the color in the future and so on. So it's not really a perfect solution, but my question is, I'm really glad that we have this report from sociological perspective, and we know that like consumers in Czech Republic and Slovakia, they kind of ready for ecological solutions, and they know they have this knowledge how to do this, they have some predispositions and so on, but we don't have the infrastructure and material, like the whole infrastructure for reuse, let's say. And some of the solutions like Loop, they seem for me to be like upper middle class things, but we have a lot of different people who will never have like an access for this kind of solution. So my question is how to make these systems, especially maybe someone from miwa can react also, how to make them affordable and how to scale up them and be available for everyone, because we will not have with this such a huge consumption of plastics and use plastics, we will not make a change just in a small share of market, like for example upper middle class. What are your thoughts on availability, reuse, or everyone?
Yeah. I just wanted to give a point first on the scrappiness of the looks of bottles. I think you're right, and in the Coke cases, after 30 uses, you will begin to see that it becomes more shabby to look at. But I think we should also challenge that idea of all our products and packaging looking perfectly. You know, there are more and more businesses that see it as a competitive advantage to actually show that the product has been used. You know. We're even working with some companies where you integrate the story of the journeys that product has been on into the marketing of the product. So you can scan it with a QR code and you will see all the different places it traveled, like the repack. We had a company here doing the reusable shipping bag as well. So same goes for a repack, a similar solution where you can see where has it been before. You know, it's part of the storytelling. So I think we should also challenge that idea of users only demanding completely new, shiny looking products. I think it can actually be an advantage. And on the scaling of solutions, that is the key challenge. But we do have a lot of examples of solutions that are actually scaled, and where the reason why they are scaled is because they have an economic benefit. So one thing is to go for the premium, superior design side of reuse, but El Gramo, as I mentioned, started out as a social enterprise to accommodate people in Chile living in poor communities who are paying a lot of money to buy a kilogram of rice when they only needed maybe 100 grams. So that's a way of actually giving them a chance to buy exactly what they need and to lower the prices of these basic commodities. And Mia might have a comment on that as well, but in many reusable systems, you're actually able to give a discount on the product, because you buy the exact quantities you need, and because of the companies save the packaging units, and it's the same goes for coffee cups or takeaway systems. So I think it's a little, we shouldn't only see this as solutions for that superior high-income market segment. It's definitely also something that can work for larger markets and low-income markets, but it will depend on how you decide the solution, of course.
I'll be super quick. I think 2 ways how to scale it up is the government and, for example, what the European Commission is doing. That's big time scaling up. Like we need 90% return rate on plastic bottles. One way to achieve it, deposits. Otherwise, do your best. But I'm curious to see how others are going to achieve it. And the second thing, it's economic motivation. So the deposits can be a great tool to sort of, and they are used in reusable business models, like with the cups, with the repetibles. You always, there's a little more that you are charged, and you're motivated to bring it back, and it doesn't cost you anything more. So it's not about how much money you have, but it sort of empowers this reusable concept.
Okay, just 1 minute. Just pick on this, I fully agree, and basically the challenge is scaling. First you need to develop the solutions, and then you need to scale. Al-Amel was already mentioned, just look it up, like who has not seen it, it's really fantastic.
200,000 users in Chile.
And then exactly, human beings are sensitive to monetary incentives. We have tested it quite widely on many occasions. So if you institute something like we have not talked about, like what you mentioned as eco-modulation or extended producer responsibility, you can easily nudge, especially the lower income groups, because they will be more sensitive to the price, to use actually better packaging. So if you increase the tax on single-use packaging compared to reusable packaging, then especially the lower income groups will be actually buying the reusable packaging. But first, of course, you need to have like a solid, viable solutions on the market.
And if I may only follow on that, if we go back to the chart with the four segments, you can say that 1/3 of these people basically will be nudged mainly by feeling they are doing worse than the others. It's those who know, but it's not their business. You have another quarter of people who actually want to learn and experience their little actions make a difference, that they need to see the results of their evening because they are basically positively motivated. And then you have 1/3 of those who are already there, which leaves only 20% kind of being unmotivated.
But this will be sensitive to the price.
Exactly. Yeah. And they will later on follow. So in a way, there's a way to scale also the take-up.
So is the last 20% the angry old man? Or?
No, young people having their lives, not being concerned because still having prospects,
So the last question, please.
Okay, I already have the answer because it was partly about where the impact takes place on different target groups. And I think one of them is awareness that I'm doing right. They pick their solutions themselves, but probably there will always be a group that will go by restriction only, or the price difference. And so I just
maybe I can what I do on it about like you mentioned like standardizing the packaging. That's the kind of like a ultimate goal almost, to make it everything happen, drinks will recycle and so on. What are the reactions of the companies it presents to you? Because packaging obviously was and still is a part of communication links.
Yeah.
It's a way to differentiate.
Yeah.
I'm asking because we have some standard design, so I'm meeting such a people in marketing, telling me what is our branding, what is this and that, and how do you feel about it? What are the reactions the last one?
Well, I think it's the key challenge, but also the key opportunity. And I think you're absolutely right. Most companies do think like mainstream single-use packaging, it should be as shiny and differentiating and light and cheap as possible. And it's just about trying to show the benefits of rethinking that. Like really showing the benefits of reusable packaging to create that new experience for the user, to create that brand loyalty. And then if you add that idea of shared design, you can also optimize operations, and then you have an immediate cost argument, but it's also the key to get the LCA to actually prove really beneficial. So I wouldn't say that they're just like cheering and thinks it's great. There is a lot of skepticism around this, But we do start, and that's where it becomes interesting, we do start seeing these really big brands intrigued by the idea. And just having big companies like the ones and retailers you will work with starting to get on board and see the potential in piloting for some part of the business, the idea of shared packaging, and then see what happens and get the learnings and show the benefits and show the numbers. I think that's where we are right now. You know, we need to see the first positive stories, and then hopefully this is a trend that will become more and more mainstream. Because I really think it's key to drive this.
I think it was the perfect conclusion of the discussion because I would say my take from this discussion today is the circular economy and all the solutions you all introduced to us are not something which is going to happen somewhere in the future, but which is already happening now. And it's about time to do something about it. It's not a theoretical debate, but it's something practical, and we have to show the best practice examples to convince the people that they should be on board as well. So I would like to thank to all our panelists today, to Jan, to Annette, to Marek, and to Vojta for their contributions. Thank you very much. I would love to thank you for paying attention to all the speeches and to all the inputs you received today. And I want you to keep in mind that circular economy is a big thing, which is happening right now. And it's also a big opportunity. It's not only a challenge, but also an opportunity for business, for the private sector, but also for the society as a whole. So please keep that in mind. And if you would want to see how it really works, please go here behind the corner, try the dispensers, or even better, if you want to see how it works in an actual shop, go to Letna, to Country Life, where it has... Yeah, there, perfect. It has been launched recently, and you can really see how it works and that it actually works. So, thank you very much again. Thank you to the miwa team for organizing the whole event. Thanks to the City Council of Prague for supporting this event space. And again, thank you all for the attention. Have a nice day.